I'm just working on my video and this is what I have to deal with. Do you know what it's called when they do that in there? It's called a soup kitchen. Pretty rough stuff. Hello everyone, welcome back to Outer Studios. Sorry for the late videos, but I promise I'll be getting back to my original upload schedule and we'll have a lot more content for you guys. So this video will be a tutorial just showing how I can quickly make a 2D level in no time at all with these basic concepts. You can really create beautiful levels if you can take your time when creating the art. First we will need a project. I'm going to call this 2D World Test. I'm just using the default 2D project. You could use lightweight render pipeline if you want to. So you will want to create a folder for the art and a folder for scripts. This is to keep everything organized. I'm also starting with a character controller. I suggest you also have a moving character to better test what we are creating. So what I am going to do is create an empty game object in the hierarchy and name it level. We'll be parenting all of our level assets to this game object. Now under the level, we will need some more empty game objects. Create one for ground, ground front, ground back one. Then we will need to create some layers to keep everything layered correctly. So click on the object that has a sprite sheet, then go to sorting layers, click the drop down and then press plus, add, create a layer for the ground, ground front 1, ground front 2, ground back 1, ground back 2. Then we will need some for the fog. So create a fog back 2, fog back 1, and fog front 1. Now it is very important to drag these layers in the correct order, like I have done. The reason is sprites render behind and in front of other sprites, so we want them to render in a nice way. Now I'm going to set my sprite sheet to multiple and click Sprite Editor. I'm going to slice each sprite into multiple sprites and name each one to ground, background, background 1 and foreground. This will help me understand what is what. Now I'm going to start creating this world first with the ground. I will change my square sprite to the ground sprite. In the inspector, you can just create an empty sprite and set the position to 0 on the X, Y and Z. Set the sorting layer to ground. Now position it to a position you are happy with. Then duplicate it and move it on the X-axis next to the previous, and so forth. I will only be doing 3 for now to create a small example. Set each ordering layer to something higher or lower than the previous. You can also make a script to do that for you. I will show you in the next tutorial level for Hollow Knight. Now add a 2D box collider to one of the sprites, and this will be our ground. You can scale it to cover the entire walking area. We can do a little test and it looks okay so far. Now let's create the first background. You can duplicate the previous ground and drag it into the background game object. Then create the sprite and sorting layer to ground back 1. Then go into 3D mode and move the sprite back a little. This will create a parallax effect once the camera is set to perspective. Now create a couple of those and move them alongside each other. Now we need to create a layer for the player and drag it in front of the ground layer. Once the player layer is set to player, we can see it's looking better. But I think it's time to get a moving camera. This is too simple. Just go to Window, then Package Manager. Find Cinemachine and install and import into the project. Now it will create a sample folder where Cinemachine will be stored. You can rename the sample folder to plugins. This will be where all of the plugins will be stored. Now go back to Cinemachine dropdown, create a 2D camera, set our main camera to perspective. Now go to CM Cam game object, and in the Cinemachine virtual camera script, drag our player into the follow slot, and it's that easy. We now have a working 2D camera. For some reason the camera is on an angle. I will set its rotation to 0 on the X, Y and Z. I will change screen Y to 0.62. This will heighten our camera and give our game a better feel. Now let's work on the foreground, which I have named ground front for some reason. Anyway, duplicate a ground, drag it to ground front, and change the sorting layer and the sprite to ground front. Now move it forward and create some more next to each other, and you can increment the ordering layer for each one. I'm also going to create a new game object, a sprite with a square, and make it black and scale it down a lot so it looks as if it is part of the foreground. This will help hide the other layers in the background if our camera had a bigger view radius. Okay, now duplicate the ground back 1 and set the sorting layer to ground back 2 and scale it up and move it back. In the main camera, set the background color to black and click play. Now it's really starting to come to life. Next, duplicate ground back 2 and name it to ground back 3. Also set the sprite to ground back 2. Create a new sorting layer for ground back 3 and drag it to the top. Set this object to the new sorting layer. Now once you have moved it back and are happy with the Z position, we can then follow the process of duplicating, flipping and aligning next to one another. Have a little walk around and I am happy with it so far, but I feel like it's time for some fog. For the fog, just create a particle system and name it fog particle. First thing you want to do is go down to renderer and set the sorting layer to fog back 1. Now change the start speed to 1. In the shape, I will be using a box. In the box, set the X to 60. Now change start size to 20. Enable color over lifetime and follow what I do. Setting the alpha to 0, then to full, then back to 0. This will make a fade in and out. With the start color, I like to reduce it so it's not blinding. And just like that, we have the most simple fog particle system. Now position down until you can just see it rising above the ground back 1 sprites. I also set pre-warm to true. This will make the particle system fully aware and not slowly build up when the game starts. I also turn my fog into a prefab just by dragging it down into the Assets tab. Duplicate the fog and set the sorting layer to fog back 2 and just scale it up and drag it back. Now I'm going to set the camera distance to 14 so we can get a better view. As I feel the camera is too close, that is much better. Now the last thing to do is duplicate the fog one more time, and you can create another fog sorting layer, but I won't. I will just set it to ground back 3 and in the order layer -10. This way it will render behind all the background 3 sprites. Move it back behind and scale it up, and this is the end result. It looks really cool and has a nice atmosphere. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I had a lot of fun making this, and I hope you will have fun too. Subscribe if you like what I did here today, or if you want to stay up to date with my other projects. Please leave a like and some feedback, that would be greatly appreciated. You can check out my links in the description. I have a Discord channel with a nice community who will help you out with any questions. Also my Patreon, and follow me on that. If you have any videos you would like me to make, please comment them. Thank you all so much for watching. See you next time.
From bodily fluid and hair samples, we determined that a bunch of old homeless dudes had an orgy in the car.
Oh, God.
Yeah. You know what that's called when they do that in there? It's called a soup kitchen.
It's pretty rough stuff.